Her friend died immediately after drinking coffee that she served. This became one of the most popular cases in Indonesia. Before we dive into the story, please subscribe to our channel for more crime documentaries. Thank you. Now, the story. Jessica Kumala Wongso and Wayan Mirna Salihin met as students in Sydney, Australia. Both young, spirited, and full of creative ambition, they quickly bonded over shared interests and late-night conversations. Jessica, a permanent resident in Australia, studied design and worked at a health company. Mirna, also in design, was the kind of friend who lit up the room friendly, expressive, and deeply loyal. For a while, their friendship flourished without question. But relationships, like people, evolve. As the years passed, subtle changes crept into their bond. Those close to Mirna described Jessica as intense, perhaps even possessive. Others said Jessica had trouble letting go when someone tried to move on. One of the most telling shifts occurred when Mirna entered a serious relationship with the man who would later become her husband. Friends recalled that Jessica disapproved of the relationship, warning Mirna against it. Some said the words were strong enough to fracture the friendship entirely. Mirna eventually returned to Indonesia, where she got married and began a new chapter of her life. Jessica, still in Sydney, began to struggle. A documented history of mental health challenges followed her episodes of depression, anger, and emotional instability. Colleagues at work described her as withdrawn and sometimes volatile. The psychological cracks began to show, and in January 2016, she left Australia and flew back to Jakarta. Her reasons for leaving were never entirely clear. Some claimed she needed a break. Others said it was a last-minute decision following a troubling incident at her workplace. But what is known is that shortly after she landed in Jakarta, she reached out to Mirna. It had been some time since they'd last spoken, but Jessica invited Mirna and another friend, Hani, to meet for coffee at the upscale Olivier Café inside the Grand Indonesia Mall. The plan was simple: reconnect over drinks. Mirna responded warmly and agreed to meet. She had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. No suspicion that this meeting would be her last. It was January 6th, 2016. The cafe was buzzing with activity as people filled seats for afternoon coffee. Jessica arrived well before the others. CCTV footage would later show her waiting alone at the table for over 40 minutes. She placed several shopping bags around the table, some of which obscured the iced coffee that sat untouched before Mirna arrived. At 5:17 p.m., Mirna entered the cafe, smiling. She hugged Jessica, took a seat, and picked up the drink that had been waiting for her. Within minutes of taking her first sip, she began coughing violently. She clutched her head and slumped forward. Hani, sitting beside her, screamed for help as Mirna collapsed. CAF staff rushed to the table, but there was nothing anyone could do. Mirna died shortly after, before she even reached the hospital. What had happened inside that glass of iced coffee? And why had Jessica ordered it so far in advance, insisting even that it be prepared before her friend arrived? The iced coffee sat half-finished on the table, its straw resting quietly beside Mirna's now empty seat. In the minutes after her collapse, the Olivier Café turned from a place of calm into a scene of confusion and horror. Waiters fumbled to find help. Hani was shaking, screaming. Jessica sat silent, pale, staring at the floor. Mirna's body, lifeless and limp, was carried out in a rush. To onlookers, it seemed like a medical emergency, perhaps an allergic reaction or a sudden seizure. But behind the scenes, whispers began. A healthy 27-year-old doesn't just fall dead moments after sipping iced coffee. By that evening, word had already spread across Jakarta. A woman had died mysteriously in one of the city's most prestigious malls. Social media was buzzing. The public wanted answers, and so did the police. The first autopsy didn't give them much. Mirna's stomach contents were unusual, but not conclusive. It wasn't until toxicology reports came back that the real cause of death was revealed: cyanide. The poison was traced directly to the Vietnamese iced coffee. There was no question this was not an accident. It was a targeted, deliberate act. Jakarta police launched a formal investigation, and their first move was to retrace every second of what had happened at the cafe. They pulled hours of CCTV footage, and there, in pixelated silence, a story began to form. Jessica Wongso had arrived early, very early. She had asked the cafe staff to prepare the drinks in advance. She insisted on placing them herself on the table, and then she waited. Shopping bags propped in just the right positions to obscure what happened next. In the footage, one detail stood out. For nearly 50 seconds, Jessica's hands were near the drinks, hidden behind a shopping bag. Nobody could see exactly what she was doing. It wasn't proof, but it was enough for suspicion to take hold. The police turned their attention to Jessica. Her demeanor that day, the early arrival, the unusual behavior. Her reaction to Mirna's collapse hadn't been that of a shocked friend. It had been too calm, too calculated, and then there was her past. As investigators dug deeper, they reached out to Australian authorities, and what they found stunned them. There was no trace of it in Jessica's belongings, no record of a purchase, no clear source. The toxicology results proved the poison had been in the drink, but how had it gotten there? And where had Jessica gotten it from? Public opinion had already chosen a side. In the court of public outrage, Jessica was guilty. Her stoic face, her silence in interviews, her refusal to break down all of it was dissected online, on news panels, in cafes across Indonesia. But Jessica maintained her innocence. She said she had no reason to kill Mirna, that she had simply arrived early to be polite. That Mirna was her best friend, not her enemy. And yet one quiet question hovered over everything. If not her, then who? The police didn't believe there was anyone else. And on January 30th, 2016, just 3 weeks after Mirna's death, they made their move. Jessica Wongso was arrested for the premeditated murder of her best friend. The trial began in July 2016, 6 months after Mirna's death. Jessica was calm, dressed neatly, hair combed, hands folded. No tears, no panic, to the public that made her colder. To the court, it made her unpredictable. The prosecution wasted no time. They told the court Jessica's crime wasn't random. It was revenge. Mirna, they said, had insulted her lifestyle, had told her to break up with her boyfriend, had looked down on her. Jessica, they claimed, took that personally and turned bitterness into murder. Then they laid out their case. First, the footage. Jessica arrives 45 minutes early, picks the table, orders 3 drinks, positions her shopping bags, adjusts the cups. Her hand lingers behind the bags precisely where Mirna's drink sat. The prosecution zoomed in, frame by frame. The jury stared at the screen. The silence in the room said what the evidence couldn't. This is where it happened. Next, they called the waiters. One remembered Jessica urging them to hurry with the coffee. Another said she acted oddly calm when Mirna collapsed. Then came the experts. A toxicologist confirmed the coffee had at least 3.5 grams of cyanide, enough to kill instantly. And yet, the defense wasn't backing down. They tore into the investigation. No cyanide was found at the scene. No fingerprints on the coffee. No proof Jessica had ever bought or handled the poison. No eyewitness. And most importantly, no motive strong enough for murder. Jessica's lawyer asked, if she planned this so carefully, why leave a trail so clumsy? They argued it was a rush to judgment, that the police wanted a suspect, fast, and Jessica, the quiet outsider from Australia, was convenient. But public sympathy wasn't on her side. Jessica smiled too much. She looked too calm. Even her silence became evidence against her. Then came her old messages with Mirna. In one, Mirna had texted Jessica, "You need help, seriously." In another, Jessica had replied, "You act like you're perfect. Just wait." The courtroom fell still. Jessica sat without blinking. Every day, the press dissected her expressions, her shoes, the angle of her eyes. Every detail turned into a headline. The nation wasn't watching a trial, they were watching a drama, live, unfiltered, brutal. But behind the cameras, Mirna's father sat every single day. Stiff, quiet, eyes fixed on Jessica. He called her a snake in the grass. He said she had smiled when Mirna died. As the weeks dragged on, the trial became less about the law and more about the story. One woman, one cup of coffee, one dead best friend. Who did it? The trial went on for months. 32 sessions. Over 40 witnesses, every angle examined, every word scrutinized. And still no one could answer the only question that truly mattered. Why? Why would Jessica kill the one person she claimed to love? October 27th, 2016 was the final day. The courtroom was overflowing. People had waited hours just to catch a glimpse of the woman at the center of the storm. Jessica entered quietly, like she always had. Calm face. Soft steps. No signs of the pressure closing in. She sat and waited. Then, The judge began to speak. It wasn't quick. The verdict took over 3 hours to read. Every piece of evidence reviewed. Every doubt addressed. Every detail put on the record. The court acknowledged it. No cyanide was found in Jessica's home. No CCTV showed her slipping poison into the cup. No forensic proof she had ever held it. But still, there was the circumstantial weight. She had chosen the seat, hidden the cup. She had insisted on ordering, had urged the waiter to be quick. She had arrived 45 minutes early, then stayed back just long enough to watch her friend collapse, and then walked away. The judge leaned forward and said, some cheered believing justice had been served while others whispered wondering if this was just a convenient ending to a very uncomfortable story. Jessica was led away. Not in handcuffs, just surrounded by guards. She had entered the courtroom as a former student, a friend, a woman once full of promise. She left it as Indonesia's most infamous convict. Later, in interviews, Jessica insisted she was innocent. She said she had no reason to hurt Mirna, that the trial was a performance, and she was its villain. I didn't kill her, she said. But no one wanted to hear that. But to others, her reaction was not convincing, and they claimed her actions looked rehearsed. After serving 8 quiet years in prison, Jessica Kumala Wongso was released on parole. There were no flashing cameras, no dramatic press statements, just the echo of a prison gate closing behind her for the last time. But while Jessica may have walked out of prison, the weight of the past walked with her. She had spent nearly a decade behind bars, years of silence, media frenzy, and speculation. Outside, people hadn't forgotten. The case still haunted cafe conversations, courtroom retrospectives, and true crime forums across Indonesia and Australia. The release was an opportunity for her to speak on the case again. For the first time since her trial, she shared her side. I was painted as a monster, she said. But the truth is, I lost a friend too. She didn't confess. She didn't offer a new theory. Instead, she criticized how the media had shaped public opinion long before the court reached its verdict. I had already been sentenced by the public, she continued. Everything I said was twisted. My silence became guilt. My face became a meme. When asked if she ever poisoned Mirna, her answer was steady. No, I didn't kill her, and I still don't know who did. The interviewer pressed. Was she angry? Bitter? Jessica paused before replying, I'm not angry, just tired. I want to move on with my life. But moving on wouldn't be easy. Even on parole, freedom was conditional. She couldn't leave the country without permission. Her every move was watched, her words dissected. Still, in that moment, Jessica seemed oddly at peace. They can believe what they want. I know what I did. And what I didn't. On Mirna's reaction to the drink. She recalled Mirna thought it tasted strange and then suddenly became ill. That's pretty much all I remember, on her silence. When pressed about her guilt or innocence, she replied, there's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to say, like, in public, but if you didn't do it, somebody else did, right? Maybe. I could only say maybe. This was her own way of talking about her innocence. But till date, things have never been the same for her again. What do you think? Do you think she actually killed her friend or she was just a victim? Do you think it was good to release her on parole? Tell us in the comment section and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories.